Hello, Central Florida, and welcome to Around the House, sponsored by Romac Lumber and Supply. I'm your host, Don Magruder, and you're listening to my 790 AM WLBE in beautiful Leesburg, Florida. I'd also like to welcome our viewers who are watching us today on Lake Sumter Television. That's LSTV, courtesy of Appleseed Marketing on Bright House 199, Comcast 13 in Florida, cable number 4. Romac Lumber is the leading provider of building materials in Central Florida. Since 1945, homeowners, builders, and remodelers have been trusting Romac Lumber with all of their building supply needs. With locations in Leesburg, Mount Dora, the Villages, and Ocala, Romac Lumber has the area covered. Home financing for thousands in Lake and Sumter County still remains quite a challenge, and the new rules, paperwork requirements, and restrictions are giving everyone headaches. It's a great time to get an update on home mortgages, especially if you're considering buying a new home, borrowing, or refinancing. Mary Rhodes, the branch manager of the mortgage firm in Mount Dora, is an expert when it comes to home mortgages, and she's joining us today to discuss home financing options. She has an extensive background all through Lake and Sumter County, and plus she's a member of the Home Builders Association of Lake and Sumter County. She's a real expert when it comes to home lending, and I'm extremely happy to have her here today. With that, I'd like to introduce Mary Rhodes from the mortgage firm. Hello, Mary. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Don. Thanks again for having me on your show.
Well, welcome back. Every time you're here with us, a lot of people comment on the great information. You have just a good tone that you set and can, it's sort of like you can take everyone through the mortgage mess these days, and that's what people are looking for, I believe.
I think so, and I love what I do. I'll tell you real briefly a little bit about the mortgage firm.
Okay.
We started out as a small company in Winter Park about 20 years ago, and over the years we've grown. We're now one of the largest private lenders in the state of Florida. So we are a direct lender. We lend our own money, we make our own decisions, and we have about 25 branches or so throughout Florida, and I have the Lake County branch of the mortgage firm.
And the thing about it, your specialty is mortgages and home financing and reverse mortgages. It's not like you're a bank that does a whole bunch of commercial lending or checking or banking. This is your livelihood, isn't it?
Correct. Yes, I've actually been with the mortgage firm for 20 years, and we are not like a bank in that we don't do auto loans or retirement accounts. We don't have checkings or savings accounts. So we do home financing.
Mary, does that keep you keener? And I guess I'm asking a loaded question. In your view, does that make you better at bringing people through this very complicated process these days?
Home mortgages is all we concentrate on. So we spend all of our efforts looking for the best loans, the best products, and the best pricing.
Well, you know, Mary, you said your office is in Mount Dora. First off, where in Mount Dora, and how can you be contacted?
Sure. Yes, our office is at 620 East 5th Avenue in downtown Mount Dora, and our phone number is 352-383-3046.
What's that phone number again, Mary?
352-383-3046.
Now, I know your office is in Mount Dora, and a lot of people say they're up in the Villages or Ocala or Bushnell. They'll say, well, she's in Mount Dora. Obviously, she's just handling the Mount Dora area. Now, I know for a fact, because you handle the mortgage of my daughter in Orlando, you guys cover everywhere, and it's really the office is just the base part, but you handle a lot of mortgages and things outside in the Villages, don't you?
That's true, Don. Yes, I'm actually licensed throughout the state of Florida. Most of my business concentrates around the Lake and Sumter County markets, but anywhere in Florida I can lend, and that's where we go.
Mary, but you do also have other mortgage firm offices, and where are some of those located at?
Sure, yes, we have branches throughout the state. We have branches from Tampa to Jupiter, Port Orange, Orlando, of course, Lakeland. Those are just a few of our offices.
Mary, as you probably know, the start of 2016 has been a little spooky. Stock market's down. We had a slight interest rate increase at the end of 2015. Seems like a little uncertainty is moving in the markets again. from your standpoint, what's the environment and in regards to mortgages and people securing mortgages? Is it a good time to get money?
It absolutely is, Don. We are lending a lot of money. There are a lot of great programs out there, and we're not having any problems really to speak of. People are getting qualified. It's just a little bit more of, I guess, a few more hoops to jump through than you used to have to.
Isn't that the real challenge in mortgages these days, and a lot of things that's tied with government entities? It's not that it's restrictive, but it's so challenging getting through the bureaucracy.
It is. It's a much more document-intensive process, which can be frustrating to people, especially people that got a mortgage 10, 20 years ago and they're back in the market getting a new one, and they realize it's a lot different now than it was years ago.
Is it just my view, or am I looking at this correctly? It seems like every aspect of business is moving to paperless, where you're filling an online form out and you're doing things electronically. But it almost seems like because of the protections that have come about after the Great Recession, that the mortgage industry has almost stepped back to a paper society where everything's documented with paper and paper for another paper. Is that a wrong assessment from my standpoint?
Well, people do have to provide much more documentation today to get a mortgage than what they used to. We turn it into a paperless file, so everything is scanned in and very private and confidentiality and things like that. But yeah, we're very much a paperless business. Everything starts out with a lot of paper, but everything's scanned into a paperless file.
You're listening to Around the House, sponsored by Romac Lumber. Our special guest is Mary from the mortgage firm, and Mary is here today to discuss mortgages. Mary Rhodes has been with us a couple of times, and she's an expert when it comes to mortgages. And Mary, when we talk about documentation, if someone's considering a new mortgage loan or refinancing or even a reverse mortgage, and we'll talk about that later, what minimum documents should they have together?
Well, Don, you really need just to start the basic income and asset documentation. Pay stubs, tax returns, W-2s, 1099s, bank statements for 2 months, and we need all pages. Sometimes we'll ask someone for their bank statement and they give us page 1 of 4, and we need all 4 pages. Or we ask for their tax returns and they give us page 1 and page 2, but we need all the schedules. So
you need the whole thing. And see that's where it's a subtle change. I know 10 years ago they would ask for an income tax and you would give them page 1 or 2. And if they asked for a bank statement, you'd give them just the top portion. But it seems like now you've got to provide every detail. And back in the day, I know the mortgage companies would call a lot of places and get this information via the phone or fax or something like that. Actually, the homeowners are having to provide that up front, aren't they?
They are, because these third-party companies are just not releasing information to us anymore
for
privacy purposes. That has a lot to do with it. So most of the burden is on the consumer.
So you get very little cooperation from banks when you're looking for bank statement information. And I guess calling an employer no employer would probably release payroll or salary information these days.
It's not as easy to get anymore as it used to be.
I understand there have been some changes in government-backed loans. Let's first talk a minute. A lot of people's eyes glass over. Can you tell everyone what is referred by Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae as it relates to the lending business? You know, during the Great Recession, they talked about Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae going out of business. And what's all that about, Mary?
Well, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac give us the underwriting guidelines that we use to underwrite our loans. And so when we go to sell these loans on the secondary market, then Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are basically warranting to the investors that purchase our mortgage-backed securities that, hey, these are underwritten to our guidelines, our strict guidelines. So this is a sound investment.
Okay. Isn't that really what got the whole Great Recession going with the home crisis, those guidelines just went away and no one was minding the ship?
That had a lot to do with it. I could go talk for a whole hour about that, but investors wanted more risk at the time, and so we gave them more risk, and then the market started to deteriorate and values weren't there anymore. So yeah, we were in a lot of trouble.
You know, I've talked often that during the Great Recession, before it, the pendulum was way over here where anybody could get a mortgage.
Correct.
And after the Great Recession, that pendulum swung all the way the other way where people no longer people who qualified could hardly get a mortgage.
Correct.
Thinking about that pendulum and where it swung this way, where it's just anybody could get it, to where no one could get it. About where are we now as you think about that pendulum?
It's come back just a little bit. So we've seen that because we see new loan products being introduced into the market. So before, or up to this point, we've had only agency loans, conventional FHA, VA, USDA type loans. But now we're starting to see a little bit of the non-conforming products out there where with a 20% or more down payment, you can purchase a home even though you had a bankruptcy a year ago or foreclosure a year ago. So we have some programs coming out. Self-employed people have always had a difficult time getting a loan because self-employed people like to write off as many expenses as possible. So now we've got products where we can still approve them for a loan without using their tax returns. We can just get their bank statements for 2 months and use their deposits as their income.
Okay. And I've heard also that Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae have lowered down some down payment requirements. Is that true?
They have, yes. When things were pretty dicey, conventional loans, at least in Florida, we required 10% down. And then at a certain point, then we got the 5% down loans back. And just recently, Fannie and Freddie have said that we can start doing 3% down loans.
Mary, when I think about mortgages and I think about common folks, you know, whether it's a senior citizen or new young couple, there's so many options. How, you know, tell me how someone, unless they talk to a Mary Rhodes, how do they discern and make the right decision on what financial product is going to be good for them? Because I know the mortgage industry a little bit, but
yes, you do.
But quite frankly, it's even confusing to me.
Well, you need to talk to a professional. And that's what I love about my job. I love meeting with people and talking to them and trying to determine what's the best loan product for them.
I guess the other thing I'm driving at, I don't see how you make that decision online. I don't see how you do an online mortgage. I see too much value from someone like you as a professional giving that practical advice to making sure you pick out the correct mortgage product.
It's such a difficult process nowadays, and so much hand-holding needs to be there when getting a mortgage that to get your financing online and to risk your earnest money deposit, to risk the home that you're going to purchase by putting all your financing needs in the hands of an online lender whose chances are out of state, that's just very risky to me.
Well, and you hit on another thing, actual good housing inventory. We have housing inventory in Lake County. And I think let's qualify housing inventory. You talk to some realtors, they've got houses available, but they're not good houses. But good quality houses that are available here in Lake and Sumter County are somewhat limited. And if you're trying to buy one of these good quality houses, you're going to need to get pre-approval letters. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on, but someone online could actually cause you to lose a deal, couldn't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's getting to a point, for example, if you see a house that you really want, it's a good house, you better act pretty quick. And it's not that because the market's booming so much. I actually think it's just so little of good inventory. Now, of course, if you want a rundown house or something you're going to have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to work on, I understand there's plenty of those. But the good ones is the problem, isn't it?
That's right. And I have seen people lose homes because they put their financing in the hands of a non-local lender that didn't understand our market.
Let's talk a little bit about credit scores. That's, we all like to keep score, and, it gets awful personal when they're talking about a credit score for yourself. What is a credit score? What's defined in your view as a credit score? And then what are the ranges for credit scores, and what's a good score versus a bad score? Can you give us a little education on that?
Sure, Don. We've used credit scoring for years, and we use the 3 repositories, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, and each has a different score, and they're all usually within the same range.
Okay.
So for mortgages nowadays, we really look for a credit score of around 640. We have some options for scores a little lower than that, but about 640 is what you want to shoot for in your credit score if you want to apply for a mortgage.
Now, considering scores, what's a high score in credit? I've heard 860. Where does they top out at?
850 is where it tops out.
Okay.
So if you have a credit score in the 800s, you're doing very well.
Okay, so if you have it, the reason why I'm trying to put it in relationship to people. All right, an 850 credit score says if minimum 640 will cover most folks probably.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Most.
What affects a credit score? I've been told that the number of accounts you open, how frequently you open, what are the main drivers to a credit score?
Credit score is mostly affected by your payment history.
Well, of course.
And it's payment history over the last 12 to 24 months. So that's going to have the biggest effect on your credit. The second factor that affects credit is the amount of credit you've used in relation to the amount of credit that's been extended to you. So if you have a credit card with $1,000 high credit and your balance is $990, that's going to really drag your scores down as compared to if you had that same $1,000 credit card and your balance was $200.
You're listening to Around the House, sponsored by Romac Lumber. We're having a great conversation today with Mary Rhodes from the mortgage firm. We're talking about how to get a mortgage and holding your hand through the process, and nobody's better than holding your hand through the mortgage process than Mary Rhodes. And Mary, I'm sure people are listening to this discussion today. They've got more questions. What's a good number they can call you at?
I can be reached on at 352-383-3046, or I can be emailed mary@themortgagefirm.com.
Now, I know you said earlier the mortgage firm has money to lend, but and I hate for you to sort of talk about the whole community of mortgage companies, but this is general information. Does it appear that there's more money being offered today for mortgages, and money is available that wasn't available a couple of years ago?
Yes, definitely. And we're at a point where people had to file for bankruptcy or foreclosure or had to short sell their home. And a lot of those incidents occurred a few years ago. So those people are back in the market and they're ready to buy a home again. And
you said that some of the onerous regulations and some of those things have eased somewhat.
They have.
So if someone had a bankruptcy 4 years ago on a home, or maybe they had a short sale or something like that, would it be, they may have applied 2 years ago and it got turned down. And, let's be honest with you, Mary, it's tough. You apply for credit or a mortgage and you get turned down. Man, that's just like a knife to the heart, and you don't want to go through that bad experience again. But
yes,
I know you can't give a blanket statement because everyone's individually different. But if someone got turned down 2 years ago and they've worked to improve their credit, should they consider reapplying today? And do you think there's a chance they could be approved?
They should absolutely reapply again because things have changed over the last couple of years. The most important thing is after a serious credit event like a bankruptcy or a foreclosure or a short sale, you must work on reestablishing your credit. Some people are afraid of credit after they filed for bankruptcy, so they choose to stay away from it and pay cash for everything, but that's the worst thing you can do. So people will come to me 2 years after a bankruptcy when normally they could qualify for a mortgage possibly, but because they stayed away from credit, they have no credit scores now. So then they have to go out and reestablish credit and then wait another year to get the scores that they need to qualify.
Yeah, most people, I've heard, just last week I had someone say he didn't qualify for a mortgage, not because he ever had a negative instance on his history, he paid it cash for everything. Cash was king. He was a country boy, and he said, I don't need credit. Well, when it came time to get a mortgage, he had no credit, and he just could not understand that.
Right. Yes, it's difficult for people to understand that sometimes.
This segment of Around the House is sponsored by the Long Lost Dedication Hour, sponsored by Romac Lumber, which can be heard every Friday night from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. on WLBE 790 AM. The Long Lost Dedication Hour is a commercial-free hour of wonderful music mixed with your past memories of people who may not be here, someone from long ago, and someone you're thinking about. Mike in the Night gently carries you through the Long Lost Dedication Hour with some of the most heartwarming dedications you'll ever hear. If you ever listen to the show, you'll tune in every Friday night. So if you're missing someone, if you're thinking about someone who's gone away or passed to another part of the universe, be sure to call the Long Lost Dedication Hour this Friday from 7 to 8 and talk to Mike in the Night, and let your dedication be heard by the ones who you still remember. That's my 790 AM WLBE every Friday night from 7 to 8. That's actually a good show, Mary.
Is it? I'll have to tune in.
It's a wonderful show in which people are able to express people they've lost, loved ones they've lost, and it's amazing. There's a lot of memories here.
Absolutely.
A lot of memories here. When you look at a total mortgage package, Mary Rhodes from the mortgage firm, we talked about credit score. How much of an influence is the FICO score in the total approval process of the credit package? In other words, is that the be-all, end-all, or are there other factors that are just as important?
Credit is very important. So credit and then income for qualifying, and that you have the assets to make the down payment that you need to make. So credit is very important. And credit is not only important, credit score is not only important for getting the loan approved, but also for the interest rate you're going to get.
Mary, I understand there's that people can check their credit scores. And do you know how, if someone has a question about their credit score or if there's something that needs to be corrected, how they can do this?